welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon. Tonight we're going to be joined by my guest, Tom. Tom had some paranormal experiences that he wanted to come on here and talk about. But before we bring him on, if you've ever had an experience and you'd like to be on Tinfoil Tales, you can send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com. And we'll get you scheduled for a future episode. I've recently just wrote a book, Shadows of Cedarville, influenced from the Dogman phenomena. Kind of took some of my own personal story and intertwined it into its own original fictionalized story. It's kind of cool. It's now available on Amazon, on Kindle. Should be on Google Books as well. If you would like to help the podcast grow, keep sharing it around. It's got a steady little growth going on, so I appreciate that. Thanks to everyone that's been sharing it. You want to help with the reviews, leave me a 5-star review, actually write something, and then I will read it for the audience on one of the episodes. Find us on Facebook. I do have some other socials as well. I've mentioned before, I'm not very active. I'm pretty bad about it, but I'm going to try and get a little bit better. I don't know where you guys are watching us at. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, whatever platform you have, or watching videos on YouTube. But again, whatever you got to do helps the podcast out, helps me out. It's definitely appreciated. But again, we're going to go ahead now and bring Tom on. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to take this time to welcome my guest tonight, Tom. Tom, thanks for coming out and talking with me.
Thank you, Brandon, for having me.
Definitely. So where are you from?
So I'm from right outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Live in Westchester, Pennsylvania is the town. If I were to tell you geographically, think of the Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, tri-state corner area, right in that corner.
I've only been through Pennsylvania once on my way to New York, because when my wife and I got married, we went up to Buffalo to Niagara Falls for our little honeymoon. So that's about the only time I've really drove through that area.
I see. So I'm assuming the western side
Yep.
of Pennsylvania.
Yeah. We didn't.
Yeah.
I've not been to the bigger cities or anything over to the East Coast. I've been to the West Coast, but I've not been to the East Coast besides like the Carolinas and stuff.
Well, the stereotype of Pennsylvania is absolutely true. You have two bookend cities and absolutely nothing in the middle. It's just the way it works with us. But my wife actually has family out in Pittsburgh, so I'm out there quite often, and a lot more hilly and mountainy than what we have over here on the eastern side. That's for sure.
Philadelphia, I'm a football fan, so
Excellent. Same here.
The Eagle fans, I always hear the stories of the craziness that goes on in Philadelphia.
Yeah. I can't even try to deny some of it. You have the fans that are fighting against their reputation, the fans that love it. So definitely, infighting between the Eagles fans themselves. And I know I'm one of them, and I know personally a lot of them that we don't like Philadelphia Eagle fans.
I think every fan base has that about themselves. Like there's certain groups of their fan base that just kind of cringe.
Absolutely. I mean, only here can we determine whether you're the right or wrong kind of fan for the same team you root for.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that one.
Absolutely. So, that's definitely a great area out there, but I'm glad you went through. In terms of the Midwest, I haven't unfortunately been to any place in there. No, I can't name one, so
we're the flyover states for a reason.
That's for sure. But I definitely have interest in going to, I don't know, it wouldn't be anywhere near you, but Point Pleasant, and definitely would like to check out the Mothman Festival one of these years. That sounds a good time.
That actually just happened, I think, this past weekend. And I know someone that had a booth up there. He's been supposed to be coming on an episode to talk about Mothman stuff, but we haven't been able to get those schedules lined up. But he's a artist, and he's a fantastic artist. And I've actually got one of his drawings, paintings up on my wall in my bedroom. He does a lot of cryptid stuff, and he's a huge Mothman. I don't want to call him a fan, but like definitely into the whole Mothman lore. And he was out there this past weekend. I was like, man, kind of jealous. I'd have liked to have been there too.
Yeah, yep. I looked into the travel and the logistics of everything, and it doesn't look like you're probably going to have to rent a car if you go there, stay outside of the town, but it definitely looks like something that I would want to be around my people, there.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of anything paranormal and the whole gambit of everything. Uh, I am an equal opportunist. I will listen to your cryptid stories, your conspiracy stories, your paranormal stories, your ghost stories, your interdimensional being stories. Yeah, Bigfoot, you name it. Who am I to say you're wrong? That's
Yeah.
my outlook on everything in that realm. If you have a crazy story, I am all ears and please talk away type of thing.
Yeah. That's the thesis of this podcast is we've all had our own stories to share, and I felt like I never had a place to talk about it. So that's why I made this for people to come on here and talk about those things that they're too afraid to talk about publicly in a setting where society dictates that people that see things are clearly crazy.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, here's a case in point. My brother. So years ago, I was in high school. He was in high school. We're not too far apart. We're 2 years apart. We were in a my mother's house, and our grandmother, so her mother, recently passed away. My brother got home from school one day, so I was off at college. He was a senior, and ran into his room, crying, like hysterically crying. This is what I was told from my mother. Hysterically crying, gets on the bed, and she said he was inconsolable. I could not get him to stop. And eventually, when he calmed down, he said he saw, mom, our grandmother, in the kitchen making tea, just like everything was normal. And she's like, well, she loves you. It's your grandmother. Why would you be so upset about that? And he said, I think, maybe I have a brain tumor. Maybe I'm hallucinating. Maybe I need to go to the ER and get a CAT scan. And that was his response to it, was something's wrong with me. And isn't that awful that, you're right. All that to say, you're right about how society makes us shut up about these certain things.
That's how I think everyone has been programmed to talk about things or feel like they can't talk about things is because it doesn't seem normal. Therefore, there's something wrong because it's like the unexplainable isn't possible. I don't know. My out there tinfoil hat type mind always is goes off to the tangents of they always talk about science and well science disproves this that and everything else. Isn't the point of science was to find the unknown, to understand the unknown, to determine what it actually is? But nowadays it's like no, science is here and this is what everything is, the truth, science is the truth. Well, it doesn't really, you stop looking into the unknown now and you use science as an excuse as to why we don't, none of this stuff could exist because science says it doesn't. I don't know.
You're exactly right about that. You know, what refutes science is newer science or better science, more accurate science. That's what happens. And honestly, we might just be in the area before that happens, where we can prove it. You have machinery that can pick up on EMF fields. Let's go back 100 years and try to explain what an EMF field is to somebody. They're not going to know how to even think about trying to figure out how to measure that with a device. You know what I mean? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so, and to the science point, I like to say this in my, and we talk a lot at our, we have Zooms for, a paranormal society that I'm in. But, you want to talk about science, science says energy cannot be created nor destroyed. And us as living things, no matter what species it is just literally a ball of energy. So if we cannot be created nor destroyed, what happens then?
Yeah.
It's the way I look at it.
Yeah. There's so many, and again, I get on these little my brain wanders things, and I there's
Yeah.
so many things out there that we can't explain and science can't explain, and the theories of like, oh, like you said, with energies can't be created, can't be destroyed, that still leaves it open-ended, because I think I've had this discussion just recently. I don't know if it was on an episode or just in general with somebody else, but I go back to the whole story of the Big Bang Theory that some people want to talk about. If we're to believe that's how the universe was created, I've always been of the mindset of, okay, if these gases combine and Big Bang and all of a sudden there's just existence, if there was nothing there before, what made the gases? What made the molecules?
Yeah.
What made these?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying it's a higher power or a God, a great creator, or anything like that, because then they're like, well, what created that? Well, I don't know. I'm just saying I don't. That theory of the Big Bang seems flawed just as much.
Yeah. Um, us as humans and people and society, especially nowadays, if we don't see it, we're not going to believe it. You know, so how can we possibly try to conceptualize the Big Bang Theory when we weren't there, or we're trying to piece together evidence from a puzzle 4 billion years ago? It's almost impossible to do. And you're right. You can always have that. You know what I mean? It's almost like numbers where, you know, remember when we were growing up, a million was a huge number, and then you learn about billions, and then you learn about trillions. Well, you're right. If these gases and molecules came together to create a big bang, where did those gases come from? Or yes, where's the starting point? If in life, we have a start and an end with birth and death, you know, we have to try to fit that square peg in this round hole, that
Mm-hmm.
everything has to work like us.
Yeah.
And, sometimes, if we're not meant to know an answer, okay. But I think we should at least ask the question up until that point.
Yeah. That's kind of where my little brain, I guess, functions. Is I'm not disagreeing with science, but at the same time, I think there's still a lot of stuff that science doesn't fully explain or understand. It's just theories at this point. And
Yeah.
pe-
Yeah.
people
There,
want to
there,
say people are conspiracy theorists. It's only a conspiracy until it's proven true.
oh, yeah.
And that's the thing I always like to say is it's only a conspiracy because it hasn't been proven yet. I'm not saying that every conspiracy is 100% true, but I'm also not saying that every theory out there is wrong. I mean, that's the whole point of a theory. Just like science, there's a lot of theories out there. Doesn't mean it's true, but doesn't mean it's not true.
Exactly. Exactly right. You know how many hundreds of years ago, how many, philosophers or scientists were killed and then they ended up being right later,
Yeah.
uh, or discredited and things like that. As we're moving in this, as we're moving in this time, we're figuring out things as we go. And that doesn't necessarily mean the things that we used to think were wrong. It's just that's all we had at the time. So if you take that view and look at it now, how could we understand? You know what I mean? We're never going to understand what happened as somebody if it comes the year, 3023, and then whatever happens in 4023. But I do know that, we are discrediting these technological advances um, that may be coming because we're not really putting a priority on, you know, like how society has in the past, putting a priority on, being the smartest, being, advanced technologically, and coming up with breakthroughs. For example, there's so many things that we could be looking at right now that don't make money. There's not a way to make money on it. If there's not a way to make money on it, why should we put resources behind it? There's no way to capitalize it, monopolize it, and sell it. So in that realm, we just don't pay attention to it. When the answer might be hard, it could be easy. It doesn't matter. We're just not paying attention to it. That's stuff that goes through my little brain too, is what are the stuff we're not looking at that we should be? How many things could we help the world out today that would help the world out today, but don't make money? You know?
Yeah. No, I agree. That's the that's the tricky part is if it's not making money, if it's not beneficial to a certain echelon of people, that
Mm-hmm.
they don't worry about it.
You're exactly right. There's a reason why they say the rich get richer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And um, why would I waste my time like productivity? We need things now, now, now. You know what I mean? Get these out. So, surprise, surprise, the world of AI and technology, robots, and automated help has risen, and things like, you know, disease curing, um, renewable energies, have fallen off. Uh, it's just how it's just how it goes, you know. Whereas before, there wasn't a need for that. You know, our priorities have switched from, a social elite being your philosophers, scientists, things of that nature, to your business owners and people that work straight into the grave, but at least they made a living for people.
Mm-hmm. The rich are made the rich are made rich by breaking the backs of the poor. Like
Oh yeah,
all the work that goes on to make them wealthy comes from the workers that are usually underpaid and continually underpaid, but to them that's what they have to do, why everyone else just benefits from everyone else's labor.
exactly. Pay them just enough to keep them going.
Yep.
Pay them just enough so they can have a nice vacation, some time off with their family, um, smile when they're in there, and then when you don't need them anymore, so long. Not even a good luck.
Give them a 50 cents an hour raise and tell them to go
Yeah.
have some fun with it. Oh, thanks for that $4 a day.
No, it's true. I mean, I work in IT, and a little bit of the IT work that I do involves recruiting, from various job boards and the analytics and metrics there. And to be honest, you don't have the company raise anymore. If you want to raise, you move companies. You got to jump to get that extra dollar and a half. You got, um, and maybe they'll match it if you are somebody they don't want to lose right now. But they'll remember that you put them in that situation down the road.
That's actually kind of funny because I don't mean funny in the sense funny, but that topic's been brought up in my own work, and I work in the construction realm.
Okay.
But I know people that have asked for more money because they've had offers from other places, and then they might get a counter offer or something like that. But then it's almost like they get put on this little list of people that they know that's asked for something, and it's like,
Yeah.
I just go with the flow at this point. I think I get treated well, and I don't complain. I've gotten raises every year, so and they've always been good. So I'm like, I'm not gonna.
Rock the boat then.
Nope.
Yeah.
I
But no,
enjoy my
there's other
job and
people.
I enjoy what I do, so I just let everyone else steer their own ship, I guess.
Absolutely. But yeah, there's other people. How dare you try to better your own life?
Yep.
You
That
know,
that
I could get,
that's big business.
that is big business. And it wouldn't surprise me, you know, it, it wouldn't surprise me if there's already bidders, um, and I'm going to switch here a little bit to the extraterrestrial realm and say bidders for, retrofitting and reverse engineering equipment. I bet you there's bidders already for all of the stuff that was mentioned in those hearings in Congress.
I bet there was already some that were already doing it in the first place, but yeah.
You might be right about that. Who knows when this has started, because the morsel that they give you is never the whole picture.
The one thing that I think we may have mentioned this on episode I'd just done recently. It was right after the whole disclosure thing. Um, One of the things that Grush mentioned, and it didn't really make like airwaves or anything else, but he basically said that there were people outside of the government that controls the government.
Oh yeah.
Like the no one else really ever mentioned it. It never mentioned on the news or anything else, but he said it once that there were outside agencies, not within the federal government or whatever, involved in this that like oversee things. So I was like, who's above the government?
Yeah. Um, that's a very scary proposition to even bring up in that setting. Um, I've of course am a junkie of anything like this. So all the podcasts, all the documentaries, all that kind of stuff that comes out, and I have seen, retired and current members of Congress, ask for certain documents, ask to see certain things, and they're not given access. And they're like, well, wait a minute, I'm in the government. Why can't I see it? And it absolutely is true that, you know, whether it's a plausible deniability scenario or a straight up, I don't care, I don't have fear of you. Either way, either way is terrifying to think about. That,
Yeah.
you know, this whole facade that we're seeing doesn't exist. Well, you go through school, you learn the Senate and the House and the presidency and the, Supreme Court, and you learn all of this stuff. And turns out, oh, you really never were taught about what really goes on over there. The older you get, the older I get, the more you realize the president really is just a figurehead of the government. The power is controlled in the Congress and then the Supreme Court, whether they allow or disallow if it ever gets to that point. But now to say the entire thing, the entire thing is just a face for what's really going on. That one bothers me. I'll be honest.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have much faith in the government ever being too transparent when it comes to certain things. I think this whole hearing or whatever, I think there was people within it that may have had questions, but at the end of the day, the actual string pullers, they're never going to let that information out. It's big business. There's too many secrets out there that they don't want anyone else to know. They can use that as national security or whatever excuse they want to call it, but at the same
Yeah,
time, there's a lot of technology. If they do have recovered spacecraft or whatever you want to call them, I'm not going to say it's aliens or whatever because I don't know. I've never seen it, but if they do have this stuff that was talked about, I can 100% understand their mindset of they're not going to give that technology away because again it's beneficial to a certain group of people that they're going to keep that to themselves because that's money. At the end
you're
of the day, it's a super technology that's going to advance things and they want to be in charge of all that advancement. So all that is big money coming at them.
you're exactly right. I'm a huge fan. That just reminded me. I'm a huge fan of Stephen Greer, and the things that he speaks on are just wild. And he comes off with an air of believability to me, even though he's more of a character anymore than anything. But I've heard him say that there's something the size of basically it was like I forget what he used, but think of like a PlayStation or an Xbox, something that big that can go in your home and power your entire home forever for nothing. And his uses for that would end poverty and world hunger, if we were to start giving these away. And the reason why we don't have them is money. There's no way to monopolize that. If you tried to and you said, okay, we're going to put one big cost for this up front, then you're going to have people buying it up and leasing them out, right?
That kind of goes
um,
back to the Nikola Tesla thing
Oh yeah, he's my
That's
guy.
if you go back to the years of him and all his science and all the stuff that he had done and everything else, like he had those energies that he was wanting to do, and mysteriously all the patents and everything got taken away from him. He was deemed crazy and everything else, but mysteriously the federal government took all of his information, took all of his documents, took all the patents, and never did anything with it. Now they're all supposedly gone. Isn't that convenient?
Hmm. Yeah, for somebody who was out here inventing wireless charging in the 1800s that we just got 10 years ago for our cell phones, that's absolutely crazy. Now, he did want to invent a death ray and things like that. And I get, maybe he was having a bad day. I don't know. But um, I don't,
That's
I think our brightest minds get silenced or get converted to a capitalist way um, early on, which then, stunts the growth of technological advancement.
depending on who you talk to, that death ray exists. That's just ask the poor people of Maui. That's the running.
Oh, yes.
That's the running story these days. Is they didn't set the fires. It was something from the sky.
As we move on and I get older and older, there's less and less things that would surprise me. I'll be very honest.
Well, it irritates me when you see Oprah Winfrey and The
Yeah.
Rock and all these other people that are a hell of a lot more wealthy than anybody else coming on your television and telling you, the poor people that have to watch them on TV, to donate your money to these poor people in Hawaii that have lost their homes in these tragic fires. But our homes did not get burnt, just the people's in the special places that we couldn't buy up until now, because now it's conveniently all destroyed.
Yep.
I mean, again,
Yeah.
maybe I'm a tinfoil hat wearer after all, but to me, it just seems a little fishy. But what do I know?
Well, I think, uh, first of all, we all have our tinfoil hat moments. And sometimes we need to forget. Sometimes we forget, like it's in the closet. You know what I mean? We haven't took it out in a while. But we all need to remember that it's still there. And that's what I think about these type of things with those fires. Yeah. And no pun intended, my way of looking at things, if there's smoke, there's fire. So when you have too many coincidences happening at once, and you're trying to spin me some yarn about how, oh, it was just because of this, or the wind was blowing this way, when you can see a perfect outline. No, no, just even if there's no conspiracy involved, just say I am exceedingly rich. I have a fire prevention system. It kicks on, it sprays water all around and helps minimize damage from fires.
Yeah,
Um, but no, I'm going to get on your TV. You're exactly right, and donate money to a place that's a dream, to live there. It's a vacation destination. All or you're from people even outside of this country. Um, sometimes you have to take a step back and admire how people can't read a room, before they put these things on the air.
yeah. It's uh, it's baffling. Again, like I said, they all have their own properties out there, and conveniently, none of the rich elite had any damage. But now they're the
Yeah.
ones coming on the television and asking everyone else to donate money. Well, why don't you donate some of your billions, Oprah? Like,
Sell your house and
yeah,
you could build from the ground up 3 or 4 houses around you that burnt down.
yeah. But
Um,
we know that won't happen. But
we can dream, right?
yeah,
So, I love all of the questioning talk, listening to previous episodes of this, I was even more excited to join you. Um, the the questioning of why isn't brought up enough, and I honestly think it's due to fear, you know, like how we were talking about. Um, let me let me give you an example here. So years ago, driving down 95, visiting family in Florida, correct? I was visiting family in Florida. I'm driving down. We're South Carolina, roughly. I can't tell you where in the state, but I know it was that state. There's this huge illuminated ball to the right um, of the car, and it was low. It was incredibly brilliant. It was very bright, and me being again, I guess I had my tinfoil hat in the car, pulled over and noticed that there were dozens. And when I mean dozens, I mean as far as I could see, cars pulled over, people out pointing at this object in the sky. Um, all of us were talking, saying the same thing, no sound, you know, definitely movement, but erratic movement. So sharp turns, 90 degrees, up, down, left, right, directions that a vehicle can't fly in that we currently have or aircraft we have that I know. Um, Next thing you know, state police are all coming up and down the highway with their loudspeakers on, telling us to get back in the car, move, or we're going to be arrested. And that light in the sky is just a blimp. I still laugh at that.
A blimp?
A blimp.
Why?
So,
Why would you be arrested for a blimp in the air?
yeah. Well, we would be arrested for looking at that blimp in the air. Um, I guess they had meant that, we're on the side of the road, we're out of but nobody was like in the highway, nobody was doing any of that. People were just along the guardrail looking over, into it was a little bit elevated, the highway, and there was a town in the distance, but there's no way it could have been a blimp. The size didn't match at all. This was a cigar shape, moving in ways a blimp has never moved. But, if you ask the cops who were there, they just wanted to keep traffic moving on. And I don't blame them at all. They just wanted traffic to move, to keep moving. But that fear, I remember distinctly, get back in the car, you will be arrested, keep moving. That's just a blimp. And officers that were walking up and down were saying the same thing. It was almost as if they got that uniform message and then were dispatched to this area. That's the type of thing that, corrupts people's thinking into not wanting to say what they saw, then also fighting a different image of what was told versus what they saw.
Yeah.
Um, I really, that night will always stick out because it wasn't, obviously you see something like that, that's incredible, right? But the reaction of the people and the reaction of, the interstate patrolmen, to us, that's something that sticks out even more than the actual, it was a UFO or UAP. It was unidentified. We had no idea what it was. So by definition, that's what that was. Yeah, their reactions will stick out always to me way more than the actual event.
I know there's been times where law enforcement have actually chased after UFOs. I remember seeing it back on one of those old TV shows I used to watch. I think it was in the 90s or whatever. I think it was in Ohio. They were chasing this UFO. And I believe it was 2008. This actually happened recently. I say recently, it's been like 15 years ago at this point, but not too far from where I live. And there was a town about 20 miles south. And I remember it was on one of those History Channel shows. I think it was UFO Hunters or something. They were actually in this town and they were talking to someone that I actually know up in my area because they recorded something too. But they had the cops were out chasing. They thought it was a downed aircraft and they claimed it crashed out here. And they, well, I seen this and they saw that. Like they actually had all that on an episode. And I always thought it was funny that literally happened like basically in my backyard within 15, 20-mile radius of where I live. There's made it on a TV show on History Channel. But I know like the police were chasing after whatever this flying thing because they kept getting reports from it and they kept chasing after someone else with radio and they saw it too, and then someone else in those going this way. So I know that there are instances where they do go after these things. As far as trying to not really discuss what it actually is, I don't know about that. To me, I always felt like there's too much, there's too many people and too many witnesses to try and keep it all under wraps. I can't see everyone in like some sort of authority being in on it. You know what I mean? I can't
Yeah,
see like everyone be like, no, this is the cover story. We're all gonna go along with it. And it's not even just like with UFOs, like even like these Bigfoots or whatever else out here that people see. My thing is, we've never seen a body. People don't run them over if they exist, and people haven't killed one. I've heard stories of people that do kill them, and mysteriously, like this random agency shows up and takes the body, tells them they can't talk about it, threatens them, and like DNR is involved in it. At some point, I feel like someone would come forward. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I can't see everyone just going along with the undercover bullshit.
I totally agree. And that's one thing as, these professions get younger and some of that moves out of it, that you might start seeing that, to be honest. Um, it seems like our fathers and the fathers before them were a lot better at keeping secrets than the generation below. And that's not a bash on them. It's just, they have more things available to get information out. Whereas we didn't have that. Um, and you brought up a very good point about, the police officers and chasing them and things like that. One of the things that comes to mind to me was the dash cam or not dash cam, the body cam footage back of that Las Vegas sighting. I guess it would now be about 2 months ago or so. That family who said there was, I guess it would be close to kind of a third kind. It was actually a UFO entity in their backyard, and you had the video, the dash cam video, the weird lights and things like that. Um, I think that, with policemen being, body cammed up now, you might start seeing some of these things trickle more and more into the public eye before. And the other thing is, again, through my, love of all of this content, I have seen interviews of actual RCMPs, so Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and they do take UFO stories, they do take documentation of it, but they have a separate way they turn that information in. They turn it into somebody, or give it to a different division than who they typically submit reports to, and they have no idea who they are, where they go, but they're to take the information just like it was like an assault or a robbery or something, but submit it differently over there. Um, I thought that was, fascinating. And again, it's a different country, different rules, different guidelines to their structures of, how they want to, police their country. I just thought, it's a lot more open with information. There's still a barrier, right? We don't know where it goes or anything like that, but at least they were willing to open up to that point. I think we would love, we have a 911, right? For emergencies, for things like that you want to call the cops and get there right away, or medical emergencies, you get the ambulance, EMS, or fires that way. But there is no real way to do it for, there's something odd in the sky. And, many people do call 911 police, and then they're often dismissed, or somebody sends a cop out there, and by the time they get there, that whatever it was is gone. Um, I don't know if that's going to make its way into our realm of possibility that there is a specific organization that you can report, a UFO sighting to, or upload it to a database. Maybe I call it something on film. But it's just definitely great to think about. When you had mentioned the Bigfoots and cryptids and things like that, the bodies, people say they shot at them, people say they killed them, and this and that. Um, I really do think that that's more to me of a thinning of a veil between one reality and the next, whether you want to call it a reality, world, dimension, whatever, whatever you want to call it. But I am under that impression that, our veil thins between the complexities of different dimensions here. And sometimes we're closer to another dimension than we actually are. And when you see what you call like shadow people, um, I've heard a lot of almost like cloaked predator type of anomalies.
Yep.
Um, you have multiples of people. You have, and then of course Bigfoots and things like that. Um, there might be a way, that these veils through all of the wavelengths of ups and downs, that it has converged. And that would explain a lot of the things of, oh, there's no body. Oh, there's no tracks. There's no, sometimes there's footprints because they do move into our, reality. But I think it might be for just a short period of time that it's incredibly unlikely that, one would die in this dimension. And who's to say if it did die in this dimension, it can't go back to its other one once it rights itself?
Mm-hmm. I've thought that too, especially with the cryptid lore, even with ghosts and aliens and shadow men and everything else. I've always thought that there is another side to our reality that we don't see, and even not even going paranormal or supernatural or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Anyone out there should be able to understand that our eyesight only sees a certain amount. There are cameras called full spectrum cameras that pick up things that our eyes cannot see.
Yep.
And who is to say that there are certain things that live in that spectrum that we don't notice in our everyday lives because we can't see it? And I feel like maybe part of these things somehow we're getting glimpses of these shadow men or these other entities or whatever it is. They're actually coming in within our spectrums that we can see, but they've been there the whole time. We just can't see them.
You're right. After a rainstorm and the sun comes out, you tend to see a rainbow, correct?
Yep.
Have you ever went and touched a rainbow?
I
Have
would
you ever
like to
gone and
I would like to know someone's been able to catch one.
yeah? Have you ever went and grabbed one? No, it's there, but it's not there. There's no mass to a rainbow. It's the reflection, and refraction. Who's to say if we can have proof of that in one way, why are we dismissing proof in another way?
Yeah. That's kind of where I lean to when it comes into the supernatural type aspects. Is I don't know if I want to say it's a spiritual realm or another dimension or interdimensional portals, whatever you want to throw out there. I feel like there's stuff that's already there here in our world that we're just not seeing all the time, anyways. And if you really want to go out there, it almost falls into the whole stupid simulation idea that I have that I've jokingly said before. Maybe the great creators or whatever, when they pop into our simulation, they're fixing things and checking things out, and that's why they look like little shadow people because they're not really part of our world, but they're going around there like looking at their creative stuff that they've done and adjusting things here and pop in and out.
You're right. We haven't unlocked them yet.
Yeah,
We haven't
unlockable.
unlocked them yet.
We haven't
But
downloaded the new update.
no, no, that's coming later. Hopefully with several patches too.
Yeah.
Um, but no, you're right about that. I often wonder what, and since you mentioned it, I'll go down there too. The simulation theory, is so, it seems so far-fetched on the outset, when you first think about it. And it's almost depressing too, oh, so this is a quote unquote game, this is a simulation to see. Well, let's go back to, and this might not be for everybody, but let's go back to like some religious texts. And your life on earth, it determines whether you get into heaven or hell based on the decisions that you make. doesn't that sound like a simulation almost? Doesn't that sound like we're going to put you here and see what you do with tests?
Yeah.
Um, could all of it be interconnected, and whether you believe, religion was based here on Earth, or the alien religion model of, God was an extraterrestrial being, and that sort of thing. Who's to say these aren't tests to prove whether we're worthy for, one, the next dimension, or two, the ultimate end goal, which is, everybody wants to be in their nirvana, their heaven, wherever, whatever you decide to call it. But the simulation theory is fascinating because, you look at all the major religions and a lot of them have a lot in common, man. Like, characters might change, but stories and principles, a
They're
lot of
all,
very, the
yeah.
same, similar. So, it almost is like, all right, let's take you back to high school or college, and you're at an awesome party and you're having a great time, and some kind of event happens. Something happens, like Mikey spilled his beer and then his pants fell down, right? Um, Everybody from that knows the main thing that happened. But as people go on and time goes on, that story starts to, get a little different from each other's story, after time. It almost sounds to be that way, as we are here, 2,000 years, later.
Hmm.
So in terms of, the simulation, whether it's religious or not, um, to me, and this is probably how weirdo I am, but it's that way would almost be comforting to me to know there is an end and there's something after.
Yeah.
I think that appears comforting to me.
I feel like it's all almost the same concept. Like you're saying with all these religions or whatever, it is all very similar, even in the simulation concept. It's, I guess, my biggest thing when it comes to religion. I'm pretty sure the episode before this one, whenever they end up airing, or maybe it was one previously, and I don't know, sometime last week I talked with a guest and I think I went off on a little tangent about religion. I don't understand that. Let's, mainly just because of where we are, whatever. It's Christianity is like the number one religion here, I
Yeah.
think, in America. I don't understand why that we're told that God knows everything. God knows everything we're going to do before we do it, before we're created, but he gives us free will. He knows what we're about to do, but it's our choice that we did it. Okay, here's where I come in. Why do we even have to live here in general to see if we go to heaven or hell? He already knows what we're going to do. And if God knew everything in the first place, why did he even create Lucifer and all the other angels that went against him to make a hell? And none of it makes any sense to me.
Yeah.
To me, that the all knowing, all powerful, all seeing God doesn't sound very like a great God, in my opinion, just because if he knew all this was going to happen, he puts us here for what? His amusement? Like, what's the point? So that's why I don't really fall in line with a lot of people that I know, because I don't bite into that. I'll use the reference from the biblical. I don't bite into that apple, I guess. I don't know.
Great pun. Love that. um, no, I can't argue with anything you've asked there. And if I, were to think about it, um, humans screw up a lot. So who's to say we didn't just interpret that wrong? Who's to say we put that in the text wrong and we got it wrong right out the gate? You know what I mean? Um, you know, was that a divine powers word, or was that us translating from something because we couldn't understand it? I guess that would be my only, argument to that if I were to try to think of one. But yeah, I often think about that too, that if everything's predestined and predetermined, you know what I mean? Like, it seems like a lazy narrative to say, well, God knows. Like, okay, well, if I'm supposed to go to bed I'm going to go to bed at 11 o'clock, and then I'll change my mind right then and go to 11:30, and they say, well, God knew you were going to change your mind. It's like, that's a lazy narrative. That's just, you're accounting for something that you don't know and acting like you do.
Yeah. And that's kind of like I said with our existence here on Earth. Like, what is our point to even come here to see how we live, to see if we're going to be good and go to heaven or if we're bad, we go to hell? But he's putting us here. Why are we even being put here? Like, you already know what's going to happen. So, what's the point of our existence? That's where my head, I just want to bang my head on something. I was like, I try to argue this point to religious people, not to like dissuade them from their religion, but at the same time, it's like, don't you see kind of the flaws in that mindset? And
Eh,
it's like,
sorry,
no one wants to listen to that. It's just like, and again, I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to talk down on anyone that's religious. If that works for people, that's great. I'm just saying that's personally my reason as to why I don't condone to organized religion. And I also think that you kind of said a little bit ago that lost translations, this and that. I've always said religion was just written as a way to control people. Like they say, this was the word of God. Man wrote this, and this is what we got to do. Otherwise, we're going to be punished. And what was all that for? The purposes we have to live this way. This way is how we have to be. The other religion, no, we got to be this way. We got. It's all a controlling of other
mm-hmm.
people.
Yeah, it's crowd control. It's allowing people to live in abide by a certain set of rules, because ultimately there is no manual to life. There's nothing telling us what to do, and then you have different upbringings that show that through one way or another. But yeah, you had mentioned about bringing it up to religious people, and the conversation kind of stops. And I really want to, say that questioning things is a healthy is a healthy portion of our existence. Just because you question what that passage, why are we here, doesn't make you an atheist, and it doesn't make you anything right off the bat. People are allowed to question why something happens without being polarized. Oh, he asked this one question, so he's an atheist. He's all the way over here. No, I think asking a question broadens people's mindset. It broadens their horizons on both ways. You for asking it, and them for listening and taking what you said seriously, and giving them a way that they could respond how they so feel. And yeah, they might not have the answer, but if one of them, Brandon, if one of them got back to you and said, you know what, that's a really logical question, I really don't have the answer to that, wouldn't that make you take a step back? Like being like, oh, I was prepared for a fight, and here they are, talking it out with me.
No, I don't get
Gotcha.
into too many heated debates with people about things anymore. I used to, but I've gotten to the point now where I'm just like, people are set in their ways. I'm set in my ways. There's no point in arguing about it. I'll say my piece, and if they agree with it, cool. They don't, I don't care. At the end of the day, my
Yeah.
life goes on.
No, that's definitely true. And there's one way to do it through discussion based, and another one that's just a heated debate. And you're never going to really truly change somebody's opinion. So if you just put that on the back burner and just have a discussion with someone, you might actually learn a thing or two, because maybe your walls are down a little bit, your back's not up, and you can go back and forth in a conversational manner about certain things. The only time I get frustrated is when you have somebody with a complete closed off mindset, and you're here for the conversation, and they aren't having it. So it's like, okay, there's no point there with
No,
anything that way. And that leads me to it leads me to these podcasts. It leads me to talking. It leads me to joining, whether it's meetup groups online, or if it's the paranormal society that I'm in. Finding an outlet for things that interest you in this realm. You almost need to get that and talk with like-minded individuals. Otherwise, for me, at least personally, I'd be ripping my hair out trying to, talk to just a normal person about these type of things. Um, but yeah, like in the paranormal society, we'll go on investigations, and I'll be honest, every single one, you get at least something, whether it comes to an EVP, whether it's an apparition, or whether it's photographic evidence. We don't count orbs. Um, Controversial, I know, but orbs could be too many things. So if we just don't count all of them, then won't get our hopes up. But honestly, the technology has come a long way all in that realm too. Uh, K2 meters have really set a lot of things off. You can get yeses and nos with them just the same you can with a voice recorder. Uh, we were touring a Laurel Hill Cemetery in Philadelphia, a big cemetery, very famous, popular. Here's a quick story for it. Like, if you watch the Rocky movies, and spoiler alert, Adrian died and Paulie died. Well, their fictitious graves are in this right up front in this cemetery. A lot of people that were on the Titanic. It's a really well known cemetery. So we're walking and we're just about finished up. And one of the things we tell all newcomers and anybody we're taking, because, some people hire us for like a private event, maybe like a bachelor party or just a night out or something like that, where they want to go with professionals, have the equipment, you know what I mean, and experience it with us. So what we told everybody in the very beginning, if you see something, say something, because, we're here to document evidence. And if you don't say anything, none of us are going to know it happened. And maybe someone else saw something and they're not saying anything because they don't want to say, oh, maybe it was wrong. We had that situation come up at this time. We were walking through. Now we were on the path. We weren't over anybody's grave. But as we turned a corner and came around a tree, we saw a pair of like waist down legs walking away. And they were almost in like Revolutionary War type getup. And I stopped. We turned around and we looked at the group and we said, did anybody see anything just there? Not saying what I saw, because we never do that. We never say what we saw right away because we don't want to influence anyone. We asked, did anybody see anything? And two members of that group, one was another member of our society, and one was a member of the group that, was on the tour with us, said the exact same thing. I saw a pair of legs in old style clothing walking away from us that way. Very fascinating, tingles everywhere. The fact that three people saw something in this area that was a half body apparition at that, had no top, but it had the legs. And none of them were going to say anything unless prompted, really gets to that point across that, maybe we're putting too much emphasis on silencing people rather than letting them talk. But that one is still to this day my only apparition of a spirit.
How big were the legs?
Okay, so they were, I would say, they were roughly a little smaller than mine, and I'm not a big or tall guy. I'm 5'9", so I would say that the legs they had long waist stockings, almost like like a Revolutionary War get up, and then the almost like capri pants, short pants type of thing that they had, and no belt, just like wool, almost wool like pants that were hanging down. I would say this gentleman, if it were a full body, would probably be about 5'6".
Okay. Now I was
But
just
regular, no, it was an adult. It was definitely adult legs. Like they were filled out like an adult. It wasn't like a kid or anything like that. Which unfortunately there has been. We all know that kids fought in that war.
now I was just thinking because the leg thing it clicks on mine in my mind about a thing that I saw years ago, but that's neither here nor there. My instance is it's crazy. But anyways, um I know you'd mentioned, I'm looking through your email.
Yeah, sure.
You'd mentioned you want to talk about the dowling rods, the hits you got with that.
Absolutely. Oh, yes. Yes. Thank you for reminding me. We got off on the cryptid tangent for a while, but yes,
Yeah.
down rods. Those are by far the most fascinating piece of equipment, obviously not electronic at all, that I have ever witnessed. Now, uh, when I first came into the society, I've heard about them, but I never saw them in use, right? So when I was first shown them, they handed them to me. I held on to them. Um, the the handle part is is completely like independent of the rod itself. So say I twist it all the way to the right, the rod will stay still no matter where it'll still stay straight rather no matter where I'm twisting it.
Yeah.
So I can't manipulate it by like moving it one way or another. I would have to move my whole arm to get it to point in that direction. There's no physical way for me to move my wrist to make it like go one way or the other. So once I held it and got a feel of it and saw what it was like, I'm like, oh wow, this is fascinating. And you grab them and you like shake them out and put them down to your waist to like reset. That's like a reset of them. You bring them up, you have your arms at about 90 degrees, you're holding them, and you ask the spirit in the room, because they're everywhere. A lot of times we just don't know. But you say, can you show me yes? And the rod will either stay parallel or cross. And then whatever it does, you say, can you show me no? And every single time it does the opposite of whatever the first one did as I'm holding on to it. And I'm like, okay, so for me, straight, like parallel to each other was yes, and crossed was no. I've known some people. One of the guys in his cross is yes, and straight is no. So it's all dependent on how whatever that spirit wants to communicate with you. So I have it, and I was like, oh, that was cool. Like I'm not really thinking about it. I'm like, oh, cool party trick or whatever it was. And they're like, ask more questions. I'm like, okay, are you a male? And it stayed straight, like yes. And I was like, are you over 30 years old? And went to no. I said, are you over 20 years old? It went back to yes. And I was like, wow, okay, so we got a 20-year-old male with us here. This was at a library. Yes, I should have mentioned that. So we're at a library giving a discussion about to anybody who signs up to come in, and then we just talk about the paranormal equipment, things like that. So I should preface that. But I'm holding on to the rods. I got the 20-year-old male. I said, did you work in this library? And it stayed straight. It said yes. And the woman who was there, the woman who was and said, I don't want to interrupt, but years ago we had somebody here who passed away in a car accident that worked here. I didn't know this library. This is my first time holding the rods. That was incredible to feel. And that goosebumps everywhere, just like you said. But not only that, I'm holding it. And the one guy who's used to it said, now let me show you something here. It said, point to, I believe her name is Claire, point to Claire. The rods moved completely on their own and pointed to this woman. And the guy, Frank, the captain of us, was like, what's your name? She said, Claire. I couldn't believe that. These pieces of metal that I'm holding gave answers just by simple, the technology behind is like the magnetic waves of pointing and keeping it straight. You know what I mean? It has something to do
Yeah.
with that. I don't know exactly, but those things were, I mean, you can give me that EMF meters, K2s, voice recording software. The dowling rods were the ones out of everything that blew my mind.
I've
I
always thought it
always
was I've thought it was strange that people use those to find water and it seems to always work too.
Yeah, yeah. Um, this planet is talking to us. I don't know if we're listening.
I think a lot of us are deaf to what the world tells us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have to completely agree with that. Um, but I've seen those dowling rods used in investigations when maybe we're not picking up anything on a K2. Maybe it's pretty quiet, and if they're intimidated by the electronic equipment, and you bring those out, oftentimes you'll get a hit with them rather than the electronic ones. Um, and we have to remember that when people cross over there and their spirits cross over, um, you know, they could very well still have the same personality. I was on an investigation before where um, this one person had the K2 meter. And, when we're in a group, we'll pass it around. People can hold it for a little bit as we're walking through. And a cemetery is a great place for a K2 because there's not a lot of overhead, like electric lines, wires, things like that. So it's a good area not to get interference from anywhere else. So I noticed this one woman who had the K2 was off a little bit behind as we were walking. And I just made a mental note. I'm going to go talk to her afterwards. Maybe she caught something. And she came up to me actually after we had stopped, and it's a pretty big place, so we stop, take breaks, things like that. So when we stopped, she came up to me and she's like, "I need to tell you something." I said, "What?" And she said, "How high does it, have you seen this K2?" I said, "Well, very rarely, but I've seen it get up to the orange part." And she said, "All right, so like the fourth one from the out of six, the fourth one?" "Yeah, that one." "Okay." I got up there too, and I was asking questions because I felt like eyes, like I felt somebody was watching me, and it was answering some of my questions, yes or no. And she was there with her daughter. My daughter came up and it stopped. And when my daughter walked away, it started again. And I asked it, "Do you like, do you not like, or do you not like crowds?" I think was the question. And it went all the way up to that orange point. Would you rather me just talk to you myself? It went up to the orange point. So, remember, they're in charge. It's on their schedule when you're doing any type of investigation. Um, you walk into a house where something is residing, a spirit, and how would you feel if like six people walked into your house? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're either going to be a little bit upset about it, which it could fake a poltergeist activity or fake a and maybe a demonic entity and things like that, or you're going to hide and not find anything. And a lot of times with investigations, a place could have so much activity, but when you're there, you're lucky to catch one or two things.
I've never been on an investigation where I've thought they've actually had anything that stood out to me. A couple that I went to, like, there was noises. Well,
What I
you're
mean?
in a building from the 1800s, things creak. So, and they had meters that they're getting, oh, we're getting a really strong reading over here. Well, the wiring's ancient wiring. So you're going to get a high EMF reading because I guarantee you it's not up to code.
Not at all. Not at all.
So there's just certain things that I'm not one that goes out there and thinks everything is paranormal. And I've always been a skeptic. And it's hard for me. And again, I think I've said this probably 100 times at this point, but I started this podcast because I was a skeptic and I saw something and I've had experiences, multiple different experiences, like with paranormal stuff, cryptid stuff, whatever. And I don't want to believe what I experienced. To me, it's not real. It can't be real. It defies logic. But then at the back of my mind, I'm like, I've seen this though. I've experienced it. I can't talk about it because if you talk about it, you're crazy. So that's why I decided to make this podcast. But again, I still look at everything skeptically. So even when I interview people on the show, I'm not here to argue what you're telling me or what anyone's telling me. I'm just giving everyone a platform. But at the same time, it's like, I want to believe it. I literally have the X Files, Fox Mulder's UFO sign here on my wall says, I want to believe. Like, that's me. Like, I want to believe it, but I always keep a little bit of doubt in the back of my mind too, just because I don't know. I don't think anyone telling me has been 100% just feed me a line of crap. But at the same time, it's like, I always got to keep a little bit of doubt. And
No,
I think that's good for everyone. Like, but I've been with people that literally everything's paranormal, 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 and it just sours it for me. I was like, you don't look at it from any other way. You're just going out there saying this is exactly what it is, and it can't be that. Like, there's other logical explanations first.
yes. You and me are very similar in that realm where we can, you know, and not everything is, we're the 50-50 people where not everything's going to be 100% one way or the other. And do I believe all paranormal, extraterrestrial, cryptid, whatever it may be, stories out there? Absolutely not. Um, it's that's what this platform is for. You tell of experiences that happened to you, and you might believe them. I do believe that a lot of people genuinely believe what they're saying, but
Yes.
also that there's a scientific component that needs to happen. Your example was perfect with the ancient wiring, or why do I only get hits when I'm down in the basement next to the boiler and the breaker box?
Mm-hmm.
uh, we got to look at we can't. A lot of times we harm our own kind with the false believing 100% of this, and we can't. And that's not to silence anybody. That's just, let's do our research before we come up with oh, it has to be this, it has to be that. um I don't know, uh, I can, in terms of that half body apparition, I can't think of anything else that would do that. Could I think of, the stories that I'm just talking about the stories I've given here, that K2 meter going off? Well, absolutely. It could be a malfunction. It could be a malfunction in the unit itself. There could have been a latent signal that came across that it was picking up. You're always supposed to have your phone on airplane mode. I don't know if you know that, but when you go on these investigations with K2, because it'll pick up your cell phone and give you false readings. Could her cell phone not have been on airplane mode? Absolutely. um, or could her daughters have when she came up? You know, there's many things that I agree with you that have happened to me that I'm like, I don't know if that's really what happened. I don't know if that's true. Um, Case in point, um, I'm drawing a blank on the word, but sleep paralysis. That phenomenon that has happened to a ton of people, and it's happened to people I know that have absolutely no bone in their body of paranormal or believing anything like that. They're like, oh, it's just something that happens. And when I've gotten it, I felt oppressed, or something on top of me or next to me, and I can't get up. You know, I know that's sleep paralysis, but like, I am really trying to scream with no voice coming out. It's almost like if you breathe all the way out, of your breath, and you have no more breath to breathe out, and then try to scream that way. That's almost what it felt like.
Yep.
I have memories, and they talk about, oh, that's just sleep paralysis. I have memories at this one house when she wasn't my wife yet, but we were dating, but we were living together, and it was an old house, and you know it was converted into several apartments, this and that. Every time we shut the bedroom door, a bang, not an open, but a bang, like somebody hit it, it would open, and we just stopped doing it. Like, that's the level of acceptance that we had with this entity in there. And in terms of the sleep paralysis, I have, and this, I'm glad I have this forum to talk about, because when I say it out loud and when I think about it, it's ridiculous. But I've woken up where my head and neck are on the pillow, and then my body's almost straight up, like not 90 degrees, but as close to 90 degrees as possible from like my shoulders down. And then I'm like fighting. I hit the bed. I'm okay. And then it's like, did that really happen? Those are the stuff that has happened to me that I'm like, oh, it had to have been a dream. The things where you have your eyes closed and you hear the growls or the screams and things like that. And you're like, oh, well, that could just be when I'm falling asleep. But I'm not doing myself justice. I'm not doing myself credibility by not mentioning it, especially on a platform like this, that sleep paralysis is something that happens to a lot of people that they often overlook. And honestly, I'm downright terrified of it.
I think sleep paralysis is a real thing. And I don't know if it's all paranormal related because I actually experienced it now that I've looked into it a little bit more.
Okay.
I've experienced it a few times and I actually just had it probably like a couple of weeks ago. Like I felt like I was awake, but I couldn't move. And I was finally able to like move out of my bed. Like for whatever reason, it just
And
felt like there was a force holding me down. It was weird. I've had
yeah,
that on and off growing up and everything else. And I never really thought anything about it. Just thought I was just not all the way awake. And I think I mentioned this before on my episode, the Hat Man and Sleep Paralysis episode. I don't want to dive back into that one, but no, I experienced something years ago like that. And I never knew what anything like that was up until just recently when I started doing this podcast. I'd never heard of Hat Man or much about sleep paralysis. But now that I've went down these rabbit holes, I'm like, oh, I guess I have experienced that stuff.
yeah. I mean, we don't know what we don't know, right?
Yeah.
So when that happens and you experience a sleep paralysis or something of that ilk, and you don't know what it is, you're like, oh, it must just be this because your brain doesn't have that frame of reference of where to slot this thing accordingly.
Yeah.
And, lucky for me, I haven't had it in a while, but, every feeling to, you know, not only can you not move, but you feel your eyes are closed, but you feel the presence right there, and you feel, you know, like a hand or a body just like pushing down on the bed next to you. When someone sits on the edge of a bed next to you, like you feel that, and it's like, you know, wow, I'm really taking it to the nth degree with my imagination. You know what I mean? Or
Yep.
is it something that can't be explained? And you know, with places and moving and having a house, now knock on wood that hasn't had a lot of stuff. All this happened at my previous place. Um, it's just the human mind is incredibly interesting when it comes to how we're going to navigate through this. I told you about the door, like somebody physically hitting. Imagine every time you shut a door, it sounds like somebody hits, like not loud, but like a punch, like a midway punch, like not a full punch, but just like a knock. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And opens the door. Footsteps in the other room that you and whomever, whether they're a guest at your house or your wife or whomever, hear. The dog looking down the stairs and like wagging its tail like it's seeing somebody. You know what I mean? Like, and we just overlook that. You know what I mean? And put it to the back of our mind. And honestly, I think it's because we don't have that. We don't have what that is yet. We don't have that reference point. Um, we can we can justify all we want as house settling and things like that. But, you start hearing disembodied voices of people saying, hey, hello. And we automatically want to assume we're wrong. We did something wrong. We didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Um, we get in our own way a lot, I guess is what I was trying to say.
I actually just, it was last week. I walked past my oldest and she was at the table doing homework and eating. And I was on my way down the hallway and I swear I heard her say, "Hey, Dad." So
Oh yeah.
I turned back around. I said, "What?" And she didn't say anything. So I walked back. I was like, "What?" She stared at me all goofy looking. And I said, "Did you say something?" She's like, "No," and kind of like made a preteen eye roll attitude. I was like, "You didn't just say, 'Hey, Dad'?" She's like, "No." It's like, okay. And I just went on and didn't went to the bathroom, whatever I was going to do. But it's like, before she said, "Hey, Dad," but whatever. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's weird
Yeah.
things like that. I every so often I'll be out and about. And I think I hear someone say something, or my wife's like, "Huh? Did you say something?" I was like, "No." It happens a lot, and I can't explain any of that if it's just our brains playing tricks on us or what it is.
No. One of the more common things, especially in households, like with family members and things like that, are an almost doppelganger situation. You know, where you hear the same voice, but it didn't come from them, even all the way up until you see them in another room. And then, say you're walking down a hallway, you saw them in the living room and you go up and get into your, bedroom and, your wife's in there, like, hey, how are you doing? You're like, wait, I just saw you. Those are the type of things that um, are more of an intelligent haunt than anything where it's interacting with you.
Yeah.
We all know the residual type where it's just basically a movie on repeat, and whatever the floor plan was back in the day, they follow that still. So that's why it might appear they're walking through a wall or things like that. Um, but no, it's definitely eerie. And I don't know if it, is necessarily a bad thing or just wants to play a trick on you. But I've been fooled by that doppelganger situation too. You know, um, walking by a room and oh, my wife's in there, and then I get to the living room and she's on the couch watching something, and you just shrug it off. But really, I got to keep in mind next time that happens, I need to go back in that room. I need to get my voice recorder. I need to get my SLS camera out. I need to figure out what's going on. But it's almost like you kind of get you're almost in like a stupor when it happens that you don't really think right. You know what I mean? And you're more so bumbling than putting a plan together. I found that to be the truth with, a lot of those, if I were to just like make it a level thing, like those are like level one things that, are more weird than creepy.
Yeah. Again, I try not to look too much into the things because I feel like when you start to look into things towards like it's being paranormal, your mind makes you start thinking that everything becomes paranormal. Like, well, was this really what I just try to tone it out at this point because like I'm too much of a overanalyzer about things, and I'll hyperfixate on it. It's like, did this really happen because of this? And like, what's going on? That's
Oh
a,
yeah.
that's a that's my mentality. Is I gotta jump down into it and just full force figure it out. So I just at this point just kind of like, oh, okay, you didn't say nothing. Okay, I'm not gonna think anything of it.
Yeah. I think that's a quality shared among many of us that engage in, and have interest in these subjects is the overanalyzing and
Mm-hmm.
and you know, um we never stop trying to find, when it comes to a rabbit hole, we never stop trying to find the bottom. We'll go as far and then next day we'll go further. But no, it's definitely a unique trait among us that have an interest in these things. The uh, what we try to do is ultimately give ourselves a reasonable explanation. I think that might boil down to it.
Yeah. No, I always like to search for answers, search for truths, never give up on that whole I want to believe mindset. But at the same time, it's like when it's in my own house, I don't want anything to do with it again. I've already had some issues before, and anymore, I was like, nope, not
Oh
doing it.
yeah, No, for sure. That's a whole level of intimacy that's getting broken when it's in your house. I
Yeah.
mean, where can you go? You know what I mean? That's what it always boils down to. If it's in your house, I mean, you're always looking over your shoulder. You know what I mean? You need to have a place that you can rest your mind and keep trying to like push it off. Is almost like a survival pattern to me.
Yep. No, at this rate, I don't think there's anything going on strange. We've had some issues here and there, but when it comes to being paranormal or anything like that, I don't know. I keep getting the random thoughts because people like to comment certain things and quote certain old sayings, but they claim when you start looking into things, things start looking back. So I always wonder if I'm doing a good thing by doing this podcast because I don't want certain things coming into my house looking back at me because I looked at it. But
Yeah. Um, and that goes back to this whole manual thing. We don't know. You know what I mean? We don't know what we're
mm-hmm.
opening up. Um, and what we open up might not be what we intended to. And you're absolutely right about things looking back at you. Um, how many times have, especially since you're married like me, have you come up with a thought and your wife or somebody say, exactly what it was, maybe that day, might not be right away, but later that day or something like that, or remind you of a story that you were thinking about. And that's just through human nature of being, next to and living, with somebody else. So, you know, can we manifest this reality if we believe in it? And if we didn't, give voice to it, then it can't happen. Who knows? Who
Yeah,
knows that? I wish I had that answer. But as long as we keep the mindset that we're just looking and we're not inviting, I think that's pretty much all we can hope for.
yeah. You mentioned the wife thing. I experienced deja vu a lot, and I mean a lot. I just had it again the other day, and every time it happens, it creeps me out. But it's always I'm having a conversation with someone, and I'm always like, I've already had this conversation. Like it hits me, and I've seen it before, and like
Mm-hmm.
I hate that. I always get like a queasy feeling, like from like my stomach. Like right once I realize that I've seen this before, I always get like a little bit nauseous feeling. It's strange.
Wow. So like a physical reaction to that
Yeah, it like
sensation.
it makes my hair stand up and like I get like a ugh feeling from it. It's
Yeah.
strange.
No, I get it. It's definitely an uneasy feeling. I've experienced deja vu. I wouldn't say like all the time, but when I have had it, you know, the worst part about it is when you had it or when it was or what you can remember from it is always, it's almost like the tip of your mental tongue. You know what I mean? It's right there. Oh, I did this. I can't finish that sentence. You know what I mean? And that's what is the most frustrating part because it's like, yeah, I've lived this through. When did
Mm-hmm.
I got set on rewind and now I'm doing it again.
I
What
just want
happened the first time? You know what I mean? Where now I have to go back and repeat it.
I just want to have deja vu to where I was sitting down watching the lottery numbers for the weekend's lottery, and then I have the deja vu the day prior of knowing what the lottery numbers are. But for some reason, it doesn't work that way.
No, no, not that way. Um, you know, they won't allow you. The lottery is also a scam to keep us, down here
Yeah.
below a certain level too. Yeah.
I don't know. I know there's a lot of stories about the lottery and a lot of horror stories about the lottery, but
Oh yeah, for sure.
that's a that's a time for a different podcast episode. But
Oh my God, yeah, that could be a whole one of lottery misfortune. And how, if you think about things on like the karma state or, net neutral or anything like that, or if you have that incredible stroke of good luck, you know, the law of averages says you're about to come into some pretty bad luck.
yeah,
That's what I think of about that. I mean, some of these things are just ghastly stories of people that get incredibly rich, and they might not even be living long enough to use it.
Yeah. Then the conspiracy side of me is like, yeah, they probably got killed off.
Yeah, yeah. We'd rather take them out than allow one poor person to enjoy some money.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. Or maybe they weren't the right person to win.
I've always
That would be
wondered
even more conspiracy.
I've always wondered if they actually just determine who wins, and the person that wins isn't really a real person. It's just someone they've made up and some actor that plays, yep, I won all this money, because you never hear about the people anymore once they win.
No, you don't. You don't. Um, you're right about that. They win. You hear their name for all of a week, maybe 10 days, and then you know who are they? I don't know. You never hear about them again.
Yeah.
They don't. Certainly none have donated to Hawaii. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Anyone out there listening, if you know someone's actually hit it big on the lottery and they're still in existence, I'd like to know. So send me an email. So we
Yeah.
we can verify that they actually do exist and it's not just a cover story for manipulating people to think that the lottery is actually real.
Wouldn't that be great? I would love to listen to that one, Brandon. The lottery podcast, and somebody who's won it big, you interview them and they tell you about all the weird stuff that's been going on in their lives and how they feel followed.
I mean, that's definitely what I'd love to do. So
Yeah.
I'm doubting any rich people listen to my podcast, but maybe they do.
Well, maybe some of the new rich, you know what I mean? Maybe some
Yeah.
of the lottery type winners will still keep their Spotify
Yeah.
account.
Well, I think we can probably wrap this up. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch base on before we do?
um, no, I got everything that I wanted to mention. It's been an absolute pleasure being on Tinfoil Tales. I love the tinfoil hat idea. I will tuck mine away for future use. And I think this was a wonderful opportunity. Thank you again for giving me the platform to speak about um, my tinfoil tales.
No, pleasure's all mine. You said you're a part of a paranormal group. Do you guys have a page or anything that anyone can
Yes,
find you
absolutely.
guys on?
Yep, we're the Free Spirit Paranormal Society, FSPS. It is Free Spirit Paranormal Society.com. We have a webpage. We have our best evidence on there and some of the places in and out the Philadelphia area that we have went. So check us out. And if any listeners are in the immediate Philadelphia area, anywhere within like an hour, look online, find us on Facebook, and, join. We'd love to recruit new members, and we're recruiting all the time. And, we'd love to have you come have a tour, and everybody's very open. Everyone has jobs, and we just like to have Zooms, video tours, and pubcasts where we meet up for a drink and share about things in our lives. So please, thank you for that opportunity to give a shout out, and please, yes, freespiritparanormalsociety.com.
Awesome. Well, again, Tom, I appreciate you coming on here and talking with me tonight. It's been a pleasure, but I think we're going to roll on out. So,
All right, thank you. I appreciate it, and hopefully I talk to you again later.
remember, the truth lies in the stories we share, the connections we make. Stay curious, stay open minded. Thank you all for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep exploring the unknown. Good night, everyone.